Welcome, Maya. Maya Menon. We are speaking to Maya Menon of the Teacher Foundation. Maya, what does the English language mean to you personally and professionally?
English for me is a medium for all my thoughts, in a sense that it's part and parcel of my life. I'm almost a monolingual person in a sense that I think my fluency in English far, outweighs my fluency in Hindi or my mother tongue. I can speak my mother tongue, I can read, write and speak Hindi, but I'm far more fluent in English. So in that sense, English is the medium for my thoughts, my ideas, and so on. As well as in terms of my work, I use English every single waking minute of my life. So in that sense, English is a very, very important part of my life.
What do you think should the status of English be within the education framework in India?
In a larger scheme of things, regardless of what I've said about myself, I think English must play an important part in education in our country. But I think it cannot be, and I see that with hindsight, in the way I have learnt or have not learnt my mother tongue. I think one has to, educate children first in their mother tongue before we look at English. I think English is very important in our country, in a large, complex country, diverse country like India, but we have to be looking at the mother tongue or the regional language. Of course, it's fraught with problems and issues, but there must be some way in which we can look at children learning in the language that they speak or hear at home first before they look at another language. It could be the regional state language or it could be English. But I think English must be one of the languages that all school-going children must learn.
Should English be promoted then for the masses rather than restricted to the classes?
I think so. I think if you're looking at education as one way of democratizing Indian society, I think English definitely plays an important role in that. Definitely.
We are here at the English for Progress third policy dialogue, right? How do you think one can jump from policy to implementation in a complex country like India?
Yes, I know. I think in India we're good at creating and developing policy, but in terms of actually implementing policy, that's where we fall short. I think this whole idea from the distinction between thought and action, I think in India we know what needs to be done, and we've thought out all that needs to be done, but we don't really have the dedication, the political will, the energy and the vision to actually put it into practice and to see how it's monitoring that implementation process. I think that is where one needs visionary people at the policy making level who can not just create policy but also actually make sure that it's implemented and the implementation process is monitored. It needs to be monitored. Otherwise, if you just sort of order people to do this, it doesn't necessarily get done. So I think that's the big challenge in India, converting policy into practice. And that was the theme of the conference also. And I think policy into practice has to happen with some amount of political and government directive. But there must be empowerment at local, regional levels so that people can take action, but they are accountable for their actions. I think, I think that's how I see it. It requires perhaps the Ministry of Human Resource Development perhaps has the wherewithal now to do it. The Education Minister seems to have a lot of ideas and a lot of energy, and hopefully he will be successful in putting that into practice.
Maya, what was the most significant success that you're taking away from this particular conference?
I think a lot of things. I met a lot of interesting people doing interesting work, which always gives me stimulus for the work that we are doing in South India as well as in schools across the country. So I got a lot of small ideas, something somebody talked about in a recruitment process or a corporate training process. It triggers off an idea for me on how we can actually perhaps implement it at the school level. So, so I got ideas from people and organizations that are totally disconnected or unconnected with the work that I do, which is in school education. So I found it very useful. I'm particularly impressed with the Tamil Nadu experiment in activity-based learning, which is spread across the state. I'm inspired by it, and I would love to know more about it. I'd like to visit some of those schools in Tamil Nadu and understand all the materials that they've produced, and what else? And I'd like to keep in touch with at least about 4 or 5 people from the conference.
Right.
People who I hadn't met before, but who I'd like to be in touch with, because I think they'll definitely be able to inspire the work that we are doing in schools.
Tell us a little bit, Maya, about the work of the Teacher Foundation and your association with the British Council.
Yeah. The Teacher Foundation was set up about 7.5 years ago as a one-stop shop for looking at teacher development, teacher training, school improvement work, some amount of curricular development. So we always felt that teachers don't have an accessible place where if they're stuck for something, they need to be able to reach out to a professional body, and the Teacher Foundation attempts to be that. It's all about empowering and enthusing teachers to be lifelong learners and reflective practitioners. And my own association with British Council, I think, began after I went to the UK for a master's in educational management. And ever since I've come back, which is about 96, so several years ago, 13 years ago, I have been in some way or the other associated with the British Council. I was also part of the LTEC's founding body. I was their South Asia editor. At that time it was South Asia editor. Now it's called Central and South Asia. So I was I was the editor for the English Language Teaching Contact Scheme. So since then my links and association with the British Council has been quite regular and warm and pleasant.
Thank you very much. We were speaking to Maya Menon of the Teacher Foundation.